Hello citizens and welcome back. In today's video I want to take a look at the backer feedback on master modes, main issues, their origin and some potential fixes. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. And here's a shout out to our amazing patrons for their support of the channel and the Armory. Speaking of the Armory, we now have dark mode, so go check it out. So, master modes come as a part of several changes that impact how our ships fly and how their weapons work. In this video, I want to focus on the flying part. The master mode's flight model introduces two main flight modes, Nav and SCM. Each of these has several sub-modes such as scanning, quantum, flight, or missiles. And there's the quote-unquote landing mode, which slows down your ship if the landing gear is down. The idea behind master modes is pretty simple. Master modes essentially try to split all flying into two groups, travel and everything else. Nav mode allows your ship to travel at high speeds and achieve its maximum speeds, as well as quantum travel and eventually quantum boosting. In exchange, it disables your shields and weapons. The reasoning behind this was explained in lore. To quantum travel or travel at high speeds, your ship needs to be surrounded by a quantum bubble generated by your quantum drive. But this not only requires a lot of power, but the quantum bubble can't be interrupted by shields or projectiles fired from the ship. On the other hand, you have the SCM mode. In SCM mode, your shields are enabled as well as your weapons and countermeasures. The trade-off is that your ship's speed is limited and can only be temporarily increased by using boost. When you transition from SCM mode into Nav mode, your remaining shield is stored into an internal capacitor, and then once the mode switch is complete, you will start speeding up. And when you transition from Nav mode to SCM mode, you will slow down to SCM speed and any stored shield capacity will be restored almost instantly. But before we get into issues created by this two-mode solution and their transition, let's talk about the new landing mode. While not a full-fledged flight mode, it behaves like one. Once you lower your landing gear, your ship's speed will be limited to a very slow pace. This is supposed to help players with landings and takeoffs. This was previously achieved by lowering your speed limiter as you approach the landing area. There is one fundamental flaw with this approach. It essentially negates the ability of any ship to perform a hot landing. Now, you could work around this by deploying your landing gear very shortly before the actual landing. The problem with this is that depending on which ship you're flying, deploying the landing gear can take several seconds. And this happens while your ship is uncontrollably decelerating, which could cause you to either undershoot the landing and become a slow target or overshoot and potentially crash. Now, this is not new. A similar slow landing mode existed several flight models ago. As it is not a major issue. However, it is an adjustment compared to the previous model. Fortunately, it seems like CIG added an option to toggle this. At the time of writing, this option can be found under Settings, under Keybinds, Flight Dash Movement, and all the way at the bottom of this dropdown. So we're already seeing some feedback being implemented. While this doesn't allow you to disable this outright, it allows you to assign a toggle button, but I would prefer if you could disable it altogether. However, master modes have one game-breaking flaw by design, a flaw that many players have pointed out. As described by CIG during the initial reveal of master modes at CitizenCon, disengaging from a battle by switching to Nav mode should be costly and dangerous. This makes sense for the initial context of master modes. Master modes were created for Squadron 42, and as admitted by CIG, they were mainly centered around the Gladius. This makes sense for Squadron 42. It's a single-player game and its main focus is combat, meaning that the combat encounters are essential to moving the story forward. So the game should discourage the player from running away by making it very difficult and costly to do so, which encourages the players to pick their fights and strategize. However, this doesn't work in the PU. Fighting is not the main driver in the PU, and the Gladius is not the only ship in the game. In fact, about half of all ships in Star Citizen are non-combat civilian or industrial ships. At the first sign of trouble, most of these ships are going to disengage because they are not built for a fight. Master modes punish running away by design, though this does come down to relative speeds of combat and non-combat ships and the environment in which the encounter happens. Let's take a look at an example. Let's say that you're a prospector mining inside an asteroid belt in space. While you're mining, you're confined to the SCM mode. You detect an unknown ship heading in your direction. You determine that you're not going to take the risk, and you start accelerating away from the incoming contact while switching to nav mode. The attacker is forced to switch from nav mode to SCM in order to fire at you. Unless the attacker has a quantum dampener, they can't stop you from running away. If they manage to approach you undetected or correctly time their switch into SCM, they can catch you before you can run away. This may sound pretty balanced, but there is one problem. Some ships like light fighters and interceptors are pretty fast even in SCM. This shifts the advantage in favor of the attacker, because they have the ability to catch you while you're still spooling into nav mode, slow and without shields. This is further compounded while in the atmosphere. When you're in the atmosphere, even if you're in nav mode, your speed is limited based on the density of the atmosphere. This essentially removes any speed difference between SCM and nav modes. So let's adjust our previous example. Let's say that you're a prospector mining on the surface of a moon or a planet. When you detect a suspicious contact, you start accelerating up and away from the potential attacker. You are still in the atmosphere, so there is little benefit from switching into nav mode, but you have to do so anyway in order to escape. At the same time, your attacker has no reason to be in nav mode in the first place, and can initiate their attack in SCM mode immediately. Depending on their ship, they might be able to outrun yours while in SCM and a little bit into the initial acceleration of nav mode. Depending on whatever the current weapon balance is, the attacker might be able to kill you before you're able to speed away. But like I said previously, this is by design. A design that was made for a single-player combat-focused game and doesn't translate that well into a multiplayer game. The second major issue with master modes is that while you're in nav mode, you're completely unprotected, even if you're moving slowly or have stopped. This is a problem when you're making a multi-jump quantum journey. When you drop out at one of the waypoints, you have to now either accelerate from zero or stay still as you spool and align while having no shields. Of course, if you choose to accelerate, once you're at full speed, you are pretty safe. But the same atmospheric limitations as described before apply. So if your destination is on a planet, you will exit quantum and become a slowly accelerating target with no shields until you switch into SCM. Though at the moment there is little reason to be in nav mode while going slow, in the future when expanded scanning comes in, it might be necessary, at which point it might become an even bigger problem. Also, as you initiate a jump through a jump point, you are in nav mode as well, and you might be stationary while you're waiting in queue to jump. But again, that's a future problem. So, are master modes a complete failure? Actually not. We can't forget that this is the very first implementation of master modes in the PU, so we're seeing master modes in their most raw form as they were ported from Squadron 42. So there is room to grow and adjust the flight model as CIG receive more data and feedback. But in my mind, master modes have already succeeded in one thing. While it may seem like that the two modes approach adds complexity, it actually reduces the number of keybinds necessary with the quantum jump controls being moved to the mouse buttons. This is a small change, but it might be a first step in overall decrease in controls complexity, which is something that Star Citizen desperately needs. So what can CIG do to make master modes more viable? Well, the main issue is that you can't have a system that at the same time punishes running away from a fight while also giving some players no other option besides running away. So what can we do to address this? One thing I would change is how shields power off as you switch into nav mode. Instead of shields collapsing immediately after switching, they should do that after the nav mode is fully spooled and you go over a certain speed as the quantum bubble is forming. And shields should start regenerating as soon as you slow down below that threshold. At the same time, I would decrease the effects of air resistance while in nav mode. This achieves a few things. First, as you exit a quantum jump, you're immediately protected. Same applies to flying and aligning between quantum jumps as well as waiting at the jump point. And second, it adds more balance to disengaging from a fight. And here I think it's important to talk about the different situations in which you're disengaging from a fight. Generally, I would split this into two scenarios. Either you're disengaging from a fight in which you were actively engaged, meaning that when the fight started you decided to participate. Or the other situation is when you're not actively engaged, meaning that the fight hasn't started yet or you're under attack and want to escape. The first scenario, in which you're actively participating in a fight, is what CIG meant when they described that disengaging should be risky. And it is by definition. If you're actively taking part in a fight and you're trying to disengage, it means your shields are probably down, or you have taken damage, or the fight has otherwise not gone your way. In this case, master modes work as designed, because that's the design. So my idea of retaining shields while in nav mode until you pick up some speed changes nothing. At the same time, you're being punished for actively deciding to enter a fight you might have not been prepared for. But in the other scenario, it grants the retreating defender time and protection while they accelerate and escape, assuming they started with their shields up. And at the same time, it doesn't disadvantage an attacker that is prepared. By which I mean an attacker that has set up their ambush correctly, by either blocking exit routes or bringing a quantum dampener, or by using any future stealth mechanics. It actually encourages tactical thinking and preparation for combat. Though arguably this potential solution would bring us back very closely to the pre-323 flight model, which doesn't seem to be the direction that CIG want to go. I believe that we can expect some changes to ship speeds, health pools, and the time it takes to switch between different modes, but not much in terms of mechanical changes. There are, however, two more things at play here: engineering and armor. Both affect how survivable our ships are. Component redundancy, batteries, and damage control might buy you time to escape a fight. At the same time, some ships might be better armored and thus be able to absorb more damage. But the actual difference boils down to the design of individual ships. For example, I don't think industrial ships will be particularly well armored to save weight and cost for their industrial capability. In other words, there are a lot of known and unknown variables that CIG can tweak. I am looking forward to seeing what CIG are going to do. Like I said before, what we see now is just the first iteration that is very much tuned for Squadron 42 and not for the PU, but this will eventually change. And with that being said, that's all for today. What do you think? What is your impression of master modes? What should CIG change about them? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.